Welcome back to the Diamond K Show. Of course, RadioFire.com, the DiamondKShow.com. 6 months after the death of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, the Jefferson County grand jury has voted to indict former officer Brett Hankison. So ahead of this announcement, the mayor of Louisville announced a curfew. They were trying to put the clamp down. The Louisville Police Department said that the National Guard was activated and all of that. So we now know that the grand jury has failed to hold the officers accountable in the killing of Breonna Taylor. Let the grand jury tell it. Let the AG say nobody's responsible for her death. I guess she just died by some freak accident. She was killed March the 13th. Fatal police shooting. 26 years old. The Kentucky Attorney General had an interesting press conference. Let's go to a little bit of that.
Evidence shows that officers both knocked and announced their presence at the apartment. The officers' statements about their announcement are corroborated by an independent witness who was near in a proximity to apartment 4. In other words, the warrant was not served as a no-knock warrant. When officers were unable to get anyone to answer or open the door to apartment 4, the decision was made to breach the door. After breaching the door, Sergeant Mattingly was the first and only officer to enter the residence. Sergeant Mattingly identified 2 individuals standing beside one another at the end of the hall, a male and a female. In his statement, he says that the male was holding a gun, arms extended, in a shooting stance. Sergeant Mattingly saw the man's gun fire, heard a boom, and immediately knew he was shot as a result of feeling heat in his upper thigh. Kenneth Walker fired the shot that hit Sergeant Mattingly, and there is no evidence to support that Sergeant Mattingly was hit by friendly fire from other officers. Mr. Walker admitted that he fired one shot and was the first to shoot. In addition to all the testimony, the ballistics report shows that the round that struck Sergeant Mattingly was fired from a 9mm handgun. The LMPD officers fired 40 caliber handguns. Sergeant Mattingly returned fire down the hallway. Mattingly fired 6 shots. Almost simultaneously, Detective Cosgrove, also in the doorway, shot 16 times. This all took place in a matter of seconds. In total, 6 bullets struck Ms. Taylor.
I think we've heard enough of Attorney General Cameron. So a lot of things that he said, many of the things that he said are his spin on it. What we do know, the former detective Hankison was indicted on 3 counts of first-degree wanton endangerment. So wanton endangerment means they're not even talking about what happened to Breonna Taylor. Okay. The endangerment charge is a Class D felony, which carries a penalty of 1 to 5 years in prison. And the charges relate to him, the officer, shooting the gun in an adjoining apartment, right? So not even related to the death of Breonna Taylor at all. Mattingly, who fired a lot of times, 16 or so, not indicted. Cosgrove, not indicted at all. They weren't even indicted on the very weak wanton endangerment charge. The Occupants of that apartment were identified by initials. None of them was BT for Breonna Taylor. And this, of course, is going to further intensify the feelings that are present in communities across this country. Another example of the Black community not getting justice. That's what's happened. And definitely want to encourage people to protest, but peacefully. Peacefully. Things are potentially going to get a bit emotional. Tensions are high. Go to some of the protests organizing in Kentucky.
But we have to understand that we have a responsibility to the rest of this nation and to generations to come, that we conduct ourselves, again, not peacefully, but non-violently, so that the story that comes out of here is that we are not the murderers, we are not the looters, we are not the burners, we are not the ones. They did it to us, and we are only responding. That's all I have.
Okay, so she said not peacefully, but not violently. Okay, there's a distinction there that was made. So the AG claims that a witness said that the police announced themselves. This warrant was faulty. Faulty evidence with regards to this warrant. The officers should have never been there. And hopefully that's something that will be addressed down the line. If you were wondering why they were so quick to come up with this money for the family last week, you may have an indication of that. And why that may have happened ahead of this very, very disappointing announcement today by the Attorney General. Of course, no officers charged directly with the death of Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor, the only unarmed person. She's the only person that did not have a gun. But she's dead. The officers are trained, right? So they're trained. I assume that they do training to fire their gun. Tell me, why is it that the person who they say fired upon them, they say hit one of the officers, yet he's alive, and the person that didn't have a gun, that's the person that's dead, and then she's not even charged when the officer should have never been there in the first place? So if you get some stolen merchandise, but let's say that you did not know that it was stolen, but you are in possession of stolen merchandise, right? You are definitely going to be liable for something. Now, as they do the investigating, maybe you purchased this from someone. You didn't know that they stole it. You didn't do your due diligence. And upon the investigation, it's found out that the person that you got it from, they stole it. You still should be charged with being in possession of stolen merchandise. It doesn't matter that you didn't know that it was stolen. You didn't do your due diligence. These officers, if you want to try to play the role like they did not know that the warrant was fugazi and faulty, right? They still should be accountable for some of these actions as we trace things back. So all of this time, and they come up with this weak, disgraceful display. Now, the grand jury made their determination and their findings based on what the Attorney General presented to them and his office presented to them. So, I mean, it's not something. It's maddening And like many people across the country, I'm upset. I'm upset about it. As I said, another example of the black community not getting justice. And so the investigation took all of this time, and they come up with this. Attorney General claims that it took so long because he was trying to do a good job, wanted to be thorough. It's not thorough. Doesn't make sense. Everything does not add up. He claims that the scrutiny that was placed on his office was misplaced because people working on a case in his office thought about this every day. Yeah, you thought about every day how you could get these officers off. And one of them happened to get a smack on the wrist. Okay? Now, being a police officer is dangerous work. It is. It's dangerous work. Especially when you're kicking people's doors without probable cause with your guns out. You know what I mean? Yeah, it could be dangerous when you do that. It's dangerous when you do the wrong things. It's dangerous when they do the right things. But it's even more dangerous when you do the wrong things. The Attorney General says that he sees the pain across the community. And I don't want to say that it was bad acting, but he attempted to show some emotion. He's very disingenuous to me. Very disingenuous. The deliberation started late Monday, and he claims that they heard everything that they needed to hear. Sounds to me like he led this grand jury where he wanted them to go, and they arrived at the point that he wanted them to arrive. Witness testimony says that the officers announced something. Now, the person who was shot, the person who was shooting, the person that they claimed to be looking for, he, of course, said that they did not make an announcement. Officers, of course, say that they did. Boyfriend was not hit by gunfire. This is a tragedy. This clearly is a tragedy. These officers are going to get off, at least as it relates to this. When asked, did he believe charges should have been made? This AG, who is slick and slippery, says that it was his job to present information to the grand jury. Okay, that's fine and nice, but answer the question, counselor, which he did not. They did not ask him what was his job. They said, do you think that charges should have been made? He declined to say anything and just dodged the question completely. Is this why the family was given this large sum of money? Yeah, definitely. This is obviously not going to bring back Breonna Taylor, 26 years old. 26 years old. And the Attorney General is, you've seen him around licking the boots of President Trump. And I'm sure that he's going to get a good pat on his head for his job in this case. Let's listen to a little bit more of the Attorney General of Kentucky.
Brought about by the tragic loss of Miss Taylor. I understand that as a Attorney General who is responsible for all 120 counties in terms of being the chief legal officer, the chief law enforcement officer. I understand that. I understand that as a black man.
Do you really?
This is. And which is why it was so incredibly important for make sure that we did everything we possibly could to uncover every fact. And I know, look, this team, myself, the members of the representatives of the Attorney General's office have taken a lot of criticism.
As you should.
But that scrutiny in many ways was misplaced because there was not a day the people in this office didn't go to sleep thinking about this case.
Takes you 6 months to come up with nothing. You should have scrutiny.
And obviously, again, criminal law is not meant to respond to every sorrow and grief, and that is true here. But my heart breaks for the loss of Miss Taylor, and I've said that repeatedly.
Hold on a second. He said, and I think that this is profound. He said that the law is not made to solve every grievance. How about it never solves the people's grievance based on the way that we see things implemented? Justice would solve the grievances, right? When they say that it's not made to solve every grievance, justice would solve the grievance. Now, it would not bring back Breonna Taylor, but it would solve the grievance. The grievance that we keep having over and over and over again is the way that attorneys generals get up in front of people and reporters and consistently lie and protect the police officers when they are wrong. Now, when police officers are correct and they are right, they deserve protecting. But when they are wrong, they deserve to be exposed. But we see countless attorney generals. Now, whether their hands are tied behind the scenes or not, the result is the result. So let's go on while this attorney general attempts to produce some crocodile tears.
My mother, if something was to happen to me, would find it very hard. And I've seen that pain on Ms. Palmer's face. I've seen that pain in the community. And what our responsibility in the AG's office was to make sure that we uncovered every fact, that we utilized every resource that we could bring to bear to uncover the facts and the truth. And that's ultimately what we presented to the grand jury. On the question of what I'm going to do, I've talked to partners in the community about helping to be a constructive member of any conversations moving forward. I recognize in my remarks, I mentioned the fact that we'll be establishing a task force in the coming days ahead to look at best practices for warrants. So there is a lot that I can do in this platform to help.
No.
With the Washington Post, just had a couple of quick questions.
I hear your voice. Okay.
Hi, sorry.
All right, this is a good question here.
Just wanted to double check. Did the grand jury ever consider the charges of manslaughter, reckless homicide? And if not, could you please explain why? And do you anticipate any other charges in this case?
I apologize. Could you say that a little louder?
Yeah, he's trying to formulate an answer.
Did the grand jury ever consider manslaughter or reckless homicide or those kinds of charges? And if not, please explain why. And do you anticipate any other charges, or is this it?
I won't get into the specifics again of the proceedings themselves are secret, but what I will say is that our team walked them through every homicide offense and also presented all of the information that was available to the grand jury, and then the grand jury was ultimately the one that made the decision about indicting Detective Hankison for wanton endangerment. I think that in terms of what happened the wee hours of March 13th, in terms of that particular or specific date and what happened that night in the apartment, I think it is unlikely that there will be any additional prosecutions that come from that event itself.
Attorney General, so can you
Another good question.
Over the fatal shot that was fired, and kind of what the issue was there in terms of determining that, and then also, did you present the grand jury with any charges against Mattingly and Cosgrove?
Another good question.
Well, so as to your first question, what I think you asked about was
The fatal shot.
yes,
The fatal shot.
reports that were provided to us by the Kentucky State Police and then the FBI as it relates to ballistics. So initially we got the report from Kentucky State Police and it was inconclusive about making a determination into that fatal shot. And so again, with the relationships that we have with our federal law enforcement.
Stop that for a second. Of course, the Kentucky Police Department is going to say that determining who fired the fatal shot would be inconclusive, right? Of course, because that's their brethren, that's their fellow blue lives, you know what I mean? So, of course, you're going to get that. So the FBI looks at the same question and they come up with a different answer, and he tries to cover up for that here.
Namely the FBI, I thought it imperative that we utilize that resource. And so they undertook an independent analysis and review of and conducted or provided a ballistics report. There is nothing that this team was able to glean suggesting that there was an objective reason for why FBI was able to conclusively or definitively state that Mr. Cosgrove fired the fatal shot. Both, again, KSP, their lab, well-regarded, well-respected, FBI, equally.
But compromised. Their lab may be well-regarded, but they have a conflict of interest with regards to determining whether one of their officers fired the fatal shot. For all of the 6 months that it took them to come up with this hogwash, it is very simple for this part. The same way that they were able to determine that the officer was not hit by friendly fire because of the caliber of the bullets that was fired, you're able to determine using the same scientific methodology who fired the fatal shot with regards to the death of Breonna Taylor. Very simple. The bullet location in Breonna's body traced from the weapon that was fired. These officers were not sharing one gun. They all fired 3 separate guns. And while these guns may have been of the same caliber, they can trace what gun fired what bullet. But that's obvious. He doesn't want us to know this. They want it to be inconclusive. So if it's inconclusive, then charge them all. Charge everyone. No, of course. That makes too much sense. What do you want, justice? What do you think, that this is supposed to go the way that it's supposed to go? No. This is another travesty of justice. This is the lack of justice. And until officers are held accountable and until politicians stop lying to the American people, we're going to continue to have a disconnect between the citizens of this country and those that are supposed to be protecting the Americans. Radio on Fire talks to America through digital news broadcasts and social media content. We are a rising multimedia platform generating over 350,000 listeners and viewers per month through our audio and video streams. From politics, breaking news, celebrity info, sports talk, pop culture, and so much more, Radio on Fire keeps our audience covered. Of course, it has been a very trying day with regards to this case. I do not think that it is over by any stretch of the imagination. I do not think that it is over. You can advertise with Radio on Fire, connect your message with our engaged audience of over 350,000 listeners per month. Get started at radioonfire.com/advertise. Of course, you can follow the Diamond K Show on Spotify or any of your favorite podcast networks. You can support the program via Cash App, $DJ Diamond K, and of course on social media. I am at the Diamond K Show, at Radio on Fire. Of course, your donations help us continue to do what we do here on the program, and that's to bring you independent news, progressive opinion on politics, social issues, and entertainment. For booking or media requests, contact me, djdiamondk@gmail.com. We're going to be following this, but this is far from over. This is far from over, and even though the Attorney General said that there are not going to be any more charges with relationship to this, we're definitely going to hope that some justice is served. And, I definitely like to hear people's thoughts on this. And until next time, if you see it, then you can be it. It is all about having vision. My name is Diamond K, and I will see you guys next time.